They cleaned our squad right out. It was 8-man squad. We was down to 8 men. Well, one guy's left on his feet, and he was leaking at the shoulder. I got wounded. Somebody hollered grenade, and I looked around. And there it was. And I says, "Kick it!" Boom.
With U.S. military mobilization developing rapidly, a vast amount of supplies, weapons, and personnel were needed to bring down the German war machine and the Japanese Empire. As the call to arms reached millions across the United States, Charles Kelley of Flint, Michigan, was inclined to answer.
I enlisted way back in 11th grade. When I graduated from school, I was going to join the Marines. I don't know, there's just something about them that appealed to me. I just looked up to them. Went down for a physical in August, left in a bus for Detroit, train to Chicago, then switched to another train to California. When there was all sailors and recruits and Marine recruits going to San Diego. And I'll never forget looking out. The guy says, "Gee, that's the ocean, that's the ocean." And one of the other guys says, "I think we're going to see a lot of that." He was right. I enjoyed boot camp. I enjoyed the rifle range more than anything. We shot a lot. I went to machine gun school at Camp Elliott, got out of machine gun school. We went to the huts, and when you go in the huts, you're going overseas. And I was walking around that night, and I seen the sergeants and the lieutenant officers drinking together. I says, "That's unusual." And the trucks were moving in and out of camp all that night. I called home and says, "I'm going overseas right now." Mother says, "Well, they're supposed to give you a 10-day furlough." I said, "Well, Mother, they got something else in mind."
Charles was headed to the Pacific Theater, where American forces had spent the last 2 years reclaiming numerous island territories that had been overrun by the Empire of Japan in the wake of the Pearl Harbor attack. His first stop had been the site of a recently won but hard-fought American victory, the island of Guadalcanal.
Guadalcanal was secured. They dumped us off there. We was in a replacement outfit. And I ended up joining 22nd Marines on Guam. And went in, took Guam, got rid of Guam, and then come back. Had my 19th birthday aboard ship coming off Guam. And we trained on Guadalcanal. CBs built a village for us to practice street fighting. And our group swam all the time. And Papa Setliff, our sergeant, he says, "You good swimmers, fall out. They got rivers on this island we're going to, and you guys are going to go across and establish a beachhead, then we're going to come across and help you." I says, "Well, thanks a lot."
The next mission was the last stop before the Japanese mainland. Having seen their enemy's ferocity only increase with every conflict, the Marines feared that they were walking into the bloodiest battle yet.
Then we headed for Okinawa. And that morning, I never seen so many ships in my life. I couldn't believe, I swear, all the ships in the world were sitting there. And we went in, and we hit a cold beach. It was just nothing. We were supposed to take the hill behind Yantan Airfield, but there was nothing there. We just went in and went on the hill, and we bivouacked. Quirt says, I don't like this. This ain't right. He says, this ain't right. But we just kept covering ground, just kept moving. Covered, and then until we went south, then we was fighting for every yard. It was organized resistance. They were all over the place. Then somebody had the bright idea, instead of taking back the road, crawl up this hill. That was a brilliant idea. Captain Lloyd wanted to make a frontal attack. Major Myers overruled him, so we tried flanking this way, flanking that way, and we getting all shot up. Lieutenant Davis says it can't be taken, that hill can't be taken. And Captain Lloyd says, we're going to take it. If it takes 1 man, 10 men, there's going to be a guy on Charlie Company sitting on top of it. I don't care what. He says, we're going to be shooting, they're going to be shooting. The guy who shoots the most is going to make it, the guy that don't ain't. I said, well, that's clear, about as clear as you can get it. Anyway, we lined up at the face of the hill, and Captain Lloyd got up and turned his back on that hill. We kept waiting for him to go flying off of there. And he says, turned around and said, let's go. And we was going along the bottom of the hill behind the ridge, and I looked up and mortars were coming down like raindrops. The guys was pinned down, and I was in one position to shoot. I was a BAR man. The guys was throwing their magazines over for me. I laid down a base of fire for the guys to get out. We got done. This corpsman says, do you know how many magazines you shot? I said, I don't know, I had them stacked up like that. He says, you shot 54 magazines through that. I said, gosh, it didn't jam or nothing. And PA would never, in training, would never compliment me. He'd always bug me and say something, you could have done this. But when we came off the hill, after I laid down that barrage, he come up behind me, he called me Sheen Gun. He said, Sheen Gun, you did real good. I said, you think so, PA? You did good. That was the only time. Well, the next day, Father Kelley was giving out communion, and we went up there. And he says, you know, today's Sunday, oh? And he says, you know what, they're at home, they got their corsages, nice hats. What was he talking about? He says, today's Mother's Day. I broke right down and cried. I come back foxhole, Jim was crying. And PA come over, my team leader. He says, are you sons of bitches cracking up? I says, no. I said, we're going to cry and we're going to be all right. Now, don't worry about it. Oh, don't be cracking up on me. I don't want to lose you guys.
With emotions running high and the Marines' thoughts centered around their families back home, they soon came across a sight that made a lasting impact on their resolve.
We was on the outskirts of Naha. And this one episode I'll never forget. We were sitting there and there was a woman with 2 little kids huddled beside the building. And one of the guys went into a store and got a blanket and covered the kids up. And I was bitching as usual. I says, boy, I get off this island, I don't care if it sinks. And Joe Pinio, machine gunner, and he says, well, I feel the same way you do, CB. But he says, I'll be over here 100 years before I'll see my mother and my 2 little kid sisters huddled like that. I said, geez, Joe, you sure hit a guy. He says, no, you feel the same way. That's what you're here for. I said, well, I guess, but you sure put it sharp. And he got killed about an hour later. I went home. You wonder about, like Jimmy Mallison. Now there was an artist, kid, he was 17. He just came in the outfit, trained with us a little bit, and he got killed. And I remember Gortz, he got killed. In fact, he was standing right behind me, and I sat down, and he got it with a sniper. But we got going down the street, houses, and everybody says, let's burn them before we go in. Behind, they didn't want to burn them. And I says to Sergeant Austin, Austin, they're waiting for us. He said, I can feel it too. And Bobby Monroe says, this is it for me. I said, what? He says, this is going to be my last day. It's waiting for me down that street. And he got killed. They cleaned our squad right out. It was an 8-man squad. We was down to 8 men. Well, one guy's left on his feet, and he was leaking at the shoulder. I got wounded. Somebody hollered grenade, and I looked around. And there it was. And I says, kick it. Boom. When I got hit, I crawled for a ditch, and Oakwoods come over and picked me up. I said, this thing blows over. He says, don't worry about it. We're running down the street, shells going off, and machine guns and everything. And I says, we're going to get hit. He says, no, we're not. We got a guardian angel on both sides. Don't even worry about it. He dropped me off, come back, got another guy, brought him back to Jeep, through all that. And something about the Navy corpsmen, if they're working on a guy wounded laying on the ground and artillery's coming in, they lay over him. They automatically lay over him. And nobody taught them that. They just do it.
Charles' injury would remove him from combat for good. After nearly 3 months of gruesome fighting, the U.S. Armed Forces had finally taken Okinawa. Though the invasion of the Japanese mainland was still on the horizon, the dropping of the atomic bombs brought a swift end to 6 years of World War, and by March of 1946, Charles was going home.
I had 2 years overseas, never got furloughed or nothing, and I was still 20 years old, and couldn't go in a bar. Wasn't old enough. But it was an adventure. I guess the most impressive thing, I met quite a great breed of men. It's like walking in the mall one day and had my Marine hat on, and 2 young Marines, they were on recruiting duty and dressed blues, come down and says, thanks for serving. I says, well, thank you, gentlemen, for holding down the wall. And they says, I don't know how you guys did it without flak jackets. I said, well, we handled that easily. We just double starched our dungarees. He looked at me and they laughed.
Hey, I'm Heather from Memoirs of WWII. Each day, more and more veterans of the Second World War are passing away, and along with them, their personal experiences. But we're on a mission to capture and share these unique perspectives right here on our channel, and your support is crucial in preserving this history. You can help us out by joining us on Patreon, and you can find out more details at memoirsofWWII.com. Also, make sure you're subscribed and click the notification bell. Your support of our channel keeps these stories alive. Thank you for sharing these videos, and thanks for watching.